H is for hat.
Good. Remember, not too loud.
I is for igloo. J is for juice. K is for kangaroo.
You know, think of what job you can have if you're illiterate. There's very few jobs that you don't need to be able to read. One of my students told the story of working for a janitorial service, and they were asking this guy to go get certain cleaning chemicals, and he couldn't read. Well, you know, you could hurt yourself. Many people can't even fill out a job application. So your lifelong chances for success are so limited, as are your children, because then you can't give them the gift of literacy.
I raised 5 children, and I remember asking them at some point when they were in about 8th grade, who was your favorite teacher in elementary school? Every single one of those kids said their 1st grade teacher. I gave their 1st grade teacher as an example, and I said, why is that? Because there was usually a teacher that was a lot more fun. They got to go on the camping outings, or they went to the museums and that kind of thing. And he said, because she taught me to read. So it opens up doors, it opens up your mind, it makes a huge difference in how you view the world.
I'm a volunteer for a program called the Literacy Heroes, and it is an outreach program of Herrick Public Library in Holland, and I've been a volunteer there for about a year and a half. When I ask how many of you love reading or are interested in reading or read in your spare time, in a class of 30, 35, I might get 3, which is a little bit discouraging. Or when I make a reference to something that I assume, oh, everyone will have read this, they don't. When I just gave my exam this week, there were words in the questions, the exam questions, that people didn't know what those words meant. So, you know, which I never even thought about when I was crafting the questions. I never thought those were words that the students wouldn't know. It's got to be very frustrating to not be able to read, and then by 4th grade, if you can't read, you can't do the work in your other classes. You can't read the social studies book, you can't read the math problems. So you have to have a certain level of reading to go on from there.
My name is Ann Merkel, and I was a public librarian. Well, let's start at the beginning. All my life I enjoyed reading, and I went through college. I became an English major, and at that time there were no teaching jobs available, so what do you do with an English major? You either write, or at that time there weren't a lot of options. So I, by default, went to library school. So I got my master's in library science, and was fortunate enough to obtain a job at the Kalamazoo Public Library in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I had more fun than anyone else, probably because I just loved the books and I love people, so I had that going for me. And when you read to a child, you can push them up a level. So in other words, let's say you're reading at a 1st grade level. If I read to you at a 3rd grade level, think of the vocabulary that you're getting. It's a whole nother vocabulary than at the 1st grade level. And you'll remember those words, and then when you see them and you go to read them, it's like, oh, I know what that word is. I've heard that word before.
I think it gives them a head start in kindergarten. First of all, there's going to be kids there that do know those things, at least have been read to. If, you know, many of them don't know how to read, which is fine, but if you have the vocabulary background, that's very important. That's one of I see my kids struggling because they're trying to figure out a word and they've never heard it before. So if parents can read to children, they're giving them a huge gift. And then there's the problem of illiterate parents growing up, having children and they can't read to them, or they're embarrassed to try to read to them because of their own shortcomings. So it's a generational thing, and you really have to work very hard to break the pattern.
There are adult literacy programs where it's one-on-one with adults, and I would highly suggest that, you know, get into one. The other thing is, I would suggest start reading the newspaper. Pick up a newspaper and read it, even if it's just the Advance or something like that. Read the ads. There's nothing above a 5th grade level in the newspaper. It's a very, there's a comfort zone to that.
Flowers? That's flowers. Where the flowers at, Gavin? Gavin, where the flowers? Yeah, flowers.
Children model what they see, and if they're not seeing reading, it's not seen as an interesting, exciting thing to be doing. And I think we have so many more media opportunities of watching a screen over reading that the temptation is just too great to leave it, leave the TV on or another screen on rather than read.
Biggest thing a parent can do for their child is appear to be reading.
I think it has turned a blind eye to the whole issue of education in a large degree. If it's not in your backyard, if it's not your family, there isn't the interest in what's going on in a neighborhood school. We have to, as a community, find ways to make changes.